Imagine that everything you've ever felt for a woman wasn't yours. That every racing heartbeat, every obsessive thought, every impulse that pushed you to cross oceans or ruin your peace was a disguised command. Not from her, not from you. From something much older than your name and your own story. Something that doesn't care who you are, what you dream of, or whether you live or die. It only wants one thing: for you to repeat the pattern, to follow the script, to be just another cog in a mechanism that has been running for millions of years. And the worst part is that you believed that mechanism was you. You called love what was nothing more than chemistry. You called destiny what was nothing more than programming. And you confused desire with meaning in life. They made you believe that magnetic attraction, that fire that keeps you awake at night, was a sign from the universe. But no, it was a hook. Bait designed with surgical precision so you wouldn't suspect it. And you, like everyone else, bit. Because that's how the trap works. It promises you the highest peak, and when you get there, it pushes you into the void. You've lived it. That sensation that everything loses its shine afterwards. That emotional hangover when you realize nothing you felt survived the moment. That's where some men fall, and others wake up. Waking up is not pleasant, it's not light and flowers, it's ripping off a bandage stuck to your skin. It's seeing that what you called eternal love lasted only a couple of days after getting what you wanted. It's looking desire in the face and realizing it's not a friend, it's a jailer. And when you see it, when you finally see it, you can never go back. The magic breaks, and what remains is an empty stage with fake backdrops and lights turned off. Some can't stand this vision. They'd rather keep believing that there's a soulmate waiting for them, that passion is everything, that without sex, there's no life. But others, those who accept the wound, who endure the rawness of the truth, become something else. They begin to live without that invisible chain. They start to notice that the world looks different when you're not filtering it through an imposed need. And at first, yes, there's loneliness, there's crisis, there's silence. But then comes clarity, a clarity with no return, one that few men can bear, because you no longer chase what the rest chase, and that separates you forever. Now tell me, are you ready for the bandage to fall from your eyes? Because when it does, nothing will ever be the same. And here is where things get truly unsettling. Because when you cross that threshold, when desire no longer dictates your steps, you face a more silent enemy. Internal silence. That silence you once filled with fantasies, with expectations, with the adrenaline of the chase, now stares back at you like a mirror you can't break. And in that reflection appears something you didn't expect, your true self. Not the one who dresses to impress, not the one who rehearses witty lines, not the one who builds his worth based on who he conquers, but that naked being who's been buried for years under layers of instinct and habit. That's when you understand that sex, more than a pleasure, had been your anesthetic. A painkiller to keep you from looking at what you didn't want to see. And without that drug, reality shows itself without filters. You discover that many of your goals weren't yours, that your battles were inherited wars, that even your self-esteem was tied to someone else's reaction. It's as if an invisible hand had been pulling your strings all along, and when you cut them, you find yourself falling into the void. But here's the paradox. That void is not your enemy. It's the space where you can begin to build something authentic. Without the compulsion to seduce, without the urgency to prove anything, a different energy appears. A force that is not desire, not need, not seeking approval. It is pure power. The same power many men will never know because they'll die obeying impulses they don't even understand. And yet, here's the most disturbing part. When you stop playing the game, the game tries to swallow you again. Society, advertising, culture, everything is designed to remind you that you need what you no longer need. They bombard you with images, with messages, with bodies that are nothing but bait. They want you back in the cage, because a man who doesn't chase is a man who can't be controlled. That's where awakening becomes resistance. It's no longer just about seeing the truth, it's about protecting it. It's walking through a world saturated with stimuli without falling into collective hypnosis. It's learning to look without desiring, to be present without biting the hook, to relate from a place that doesn't seek to consume or be consumed. And when you do it, when you truly stand firm, you start to see what others don't. The fake conversations revolving around conquest, the fragility disguised as masculinity, the fear hiding behind sexual obsession. You see it all. And that vision, even if it hurts, is freedom. Because the man who frees himself from the spell doesn't become an isolated monk. He becomes a creator. He takes the energy he once spent chasing and pours it into building. He creates projects, ideas, art, empires. His worth is no longer measured by how many times he can satisfy an instinct, but by how many times he can transform his impulse into something that transcends. And there, right there, is where sex stops being the center and becomes just a detail. A man like that doesn't fear losing what he doesn't need, and that makes him untouchable. And now, tell me, do you dare cross that line knowing there's no way back? Because on the other side, you're no longer a common man, and that, even if it frees you, also condemns you. And the most unsettling thing is that when you cross that border and leave behind the slavery of impulse, you begin to notice something that was hidden before. Most human interactions are tainted by that same drive you no longer follow. Conversations, gestures, glances. Almost everything carries an invisible thread leading to the same point. It's like watching a theater play from behind the curtain, seeing the actors move without knowing they're playing a role they didn't write. And that's where the real revelation comes. It's not just that sex is a mechanism of control, it's that the entire social structure depends on keeping that desire lit. Fashion, music, social media, even the kind of success people admire. It's all designed to keep you dancing to the same rhythm. A rhythm you've stopped hearing. At first, this makes you feel like a stranger to your own species. You see men building their entire identity around their ability to attract, and women measuring their worth by the attention they get. And it all seems like a childish game, dangerously addictive. You begin to understand that real maturity doesn't come with age, but with the ability to look at that game and say, "I'm not playing." And here something curious happens. The more you move away from compulsion, the more magnetic you become to others. Because a man who doesn't need to seduce to validate himself emits a kind of force that can't be faked. It's calm, it's presence, it's control. But be careful. It's not control over others. It's control over himself. And that's the kind of power that intimidates, that unsettles, that even provokes rejection in those still imprisoned by the impulse. With time, you discover that this clarity is not just an ending, it's the start of a much deeper path. You begin to wonder in what other areas you've lived following invisible scripts. If sexual desire was such a convincing biological lie, what other narratives have you bought without questioning? Maybe your idea of success, of happiness, of purpose, has also been shaped to keep you obedient. And in that moment, you realize this awakening is not just about sex. It's about everything. It's about the ability to see chains, even when they're invisible and made of gold. This is where the man who truly wants to live free makes a radical decision to stop being a passive consumer and become the architect of his own existence. He no longer reacts. He creates. He no longer lets himself be carried by cultural currents. He designs them. He starts choosing who he surrounds himself with, what he feeds his mind, what battles he fights. And by doing so, his life stops being a stage for biology's entertainment and becomes a deliberate work. Sex is no longer the center, but neither is it the enemy. It's simply a tool, a nuance, a conscious choice, not a chain. And when you reach this point, when you're no longer hostage to any impulse, you understand that true freedom is not having everything you want. It's not being a slave to what you thought you needed. That's the moment you stop living as a common man and start existing as something more, something most will never see, because not everyone is willing to bear the discomfort of being truly free. And when you think you've reached the end of this liberation, a new, subtler, more dangerous terrain appears. Time. Because by breaking the compulsion, you suddenly notice you have hours, days, weeks of energy that used to slip away in the constant hunt. And here comes a question not everyone is ready to face. What will you do now with all that time nature had hijacked for its own purposes? Many men, upon recovering it, feel vertigo. It's as if they'd been handed a key that opens all doors, but with no map telling them which one to enter. That vertigo is proof that instinct not only robbed you of your freedom, it also robbed you of your direction. And without it, the horizon is vast, but also terrifying. It's then that you discover the real challenge is not stopping being a slave to sex, but learning to live in a world where you no longer have that false compass. And here's the fascinating part. Most, when left without that guide, look for another chain. They latch onto non-stop work, to hoarding money, to social validation. They change prisons, but remain locked up. The man who has truly awakened understands that the answer is not to replace one compulsive desire with another, but to learn to stand in that space of freedom without running away. It's cultivating the ability to be with oneself without needing distraction. And here comes a concept few consider: creation as resistance. I'm not talking only about art or business, but about any way of materializing your energy into something that exists beyond you. Building not to impress, not to prove, but because life becomes more bearable and more intense when your energy is transformed into something that doesn't dissolve with time. While other men keep exhausting their strength in battles designed for them, you invest it in erecting something that doesn't depend on a face, a body, or a moment. But there's more, and not everyone is ready to hear it. When you become a man who no longer needs, you realize the rest of the world still does, and there is born a strange, cold, lucid kind of compassion. You begin to see the suffering disguised as fun, the anxiety hiding behind conquest, the loneliness hiding in obsession. And although you could take advantage of it, you don't, because you're no longer moved by the same logic. That compassion is not weakness, it's proof you've crossed to another level. A level where your energy is no longer spent surviving the trap, but avoiding the new ones waiting for you at every corner. And here, without noticing, is where another game begins. One not played with bodies, but with ideas. And there, nature has no power over you. And in this new game, in this territory where the rules are no longer written by primitive instincts, you discover that the only thing truly left standing is consciousness. That silent spark that observes everything without being dragged away. And here something unexpected happens. You begin to feel invisible and, at the same time, more present than ever. Invisible to the traps that used to capture you. Present to what really matters. You're no longer a soldier obeying invisible orders. You're now the strategist who sees the whole map. And when you understand that, you realize that what you once called pleasure was nothing but a cheap distraction compared to the brutal joy of being truly free. This is the point most men never reach. Not because they can't, but because they can't stand the discomfort of walking without a shepherd telling them where to go. You can choose to be just another, to keep obeying an instinct that isn't even yours, or you can take the leap and live as a man who belongs to no one. A man who directs his energy toward what leaves a mark, who builds something that can't be bought or manipulated. And that man doesn't compete, doesn't beg, doesn't burn out. That man creates. If you've made it this far, it means something in you has already begun to awaken. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. Don't ignore that feeling. Give it space, feed it, watch it grow until it's so big that no chain can hold it. Because what awaits you on the other side is not less life. It's more life. More real, more intense, more yours. So I invite you, if this message has resonated in the deepest part of you, to subscribe right now and leave a single sentence in the comments summarizing your reaction. It can be anything, but it must truly come from you. I want to read what this video has ignited in your mind. And to say goodbye, I'll just tell you this. When you turn off this screen, the world will still be there, with its traps, its illusions, and its bait. But you are no longer the same as when you started watching. You've seen the strings, you've seen the trick, and now you have the most dangerous choice of all, to act as if you knew nothing, or to play with the rules broken. The decision is yours. I'll see you on the other side.